Hello, welcome to Mr. Daydream Land. As you can see, everything around us is Mr. Daydream form. That is why the floor is basically gray because of the background before Mr. Daydream. Now, speaking of that, I have brought you two books. Oh, yeah, I decided to just fly in. I brought you two books, but today we're going to read Mr. Daydream. So, in Daydream Land, you can do anything you want, basically. But anyway, let's read in Daydream Land. What a good idea. Wait, actually, who's the good? Oh, yeah, that was me. Anyway, it's a very echoey place. But anyway, thanks for coming. It's nice of you to come. Maybe I'm just gonna fly over somewhere and put this other book that we're gonna read tomorrow away. Aha, back to my flying seat. Anyway, let's go into Mr. Daydream. Yahoo! Ready? Let's go. Here we are. This is a story about Mr. Daydream. You know what he looks like, don't you? Because you've seen his picture on the front of this book, or in Mr. Daydream Land. It's also a good story about a little boy called Jack, and you don't know him or don't know what he looks like. So here's a picture of him, like I showed you. Now Jack was a very good little boy. He always ate up all his lunch. He always went to bed when he was told. He always said please and thank you. But Jack was a daydreamer. We're falling into Daydream Place. Whenever he was supposed to be thinking about something, he found himself thinking about something else. Daydreaming. One day Jack was at school. He was sitting at his desk, listening to the teacher talk about history. It was a very warm day, and Jack was glad he was sitting at the back of the classroom next to the open window. This silly thing keeps on falling. Suddenly, out of the corner of his eye, Jack saw something outside the window in the grass in front of the school. Something blue. It was a small cloud-shaped figure. Jack couldn't believe his eyes. The figure looked at Jack. Looking at him, he smiled and waved. Mr. Daydream. Jack looked at his teacher, who was still talking. They got up quietly, ever so quickly, and slipped out the open window. He crossed the grass to the strange-looking cloud-shaped figure. Hello, he said. Who are you? I'm Mr. Daydream, said the figure. What's your name? Jack, said Jack. Clatter of noises. I'm going off on an adventure, said Mr. Daydream. Would you like to come with me? Oh, yes, please, replied Jack. Very well, then, said Mr. Daydream, and putting 2 fingers in his mouth, he let out the loudest whistle Jack had ever heard in his whole life. and a huge bird swooped down out of the sky and landed beside Jack and Mr. Daydream. "Come on," said Mr. Daydream to Jack, and climbed in on to the bird's back. Jack climbed on too. It was really an enormous bird, and there was plenty of room for both of them. "Hold on," said Mr. Daydream. Jack held on tight. The huge bird flapped its huge wings, and suddenly they were up high in the air. They flew faster and faster over the countryside. They flew over fields and farms and towns and hills and trees and valleys until they were far, far away from Jack's school. It was very exciting. I wonder how exciting it feels to be flying with me in Mr. Daydream. Probably not that exciting. But Mr. Daydream turned to Jack. "How would you like to go to Africa?" he shouted. They were traveling so fast now, Jack just nodded his head and held on even tighter. Suddenly, it seemed in no time at all, there, below them, was Africa. The bird landed in a jungle clearing, and Jack and Mr. Daydream climbed off the bird's back. It was very hot. I'm just going to sit down. It is very hot. "Come on," said Mr. Daydream to Jack. "Let's go and explore." So off they set, pushing their way through the jungle. Suddenly, in the middle of the clearing, they saw an elephant. "Hello, Mr. Daydream," trumpeted the elephant down his trunk. "Would you like a lift?" "Yes, please," replied Mr. Daydream, and the elephant reached out his trunk, picked him up, and then put him on his back. Then he reached out his trunk again, picked up Jack, and put him on his back. It was very, very high. This keeps on falling away today. Oops. I'll just pick that up. Oh! Alright, I'm sorry about that. Here we go.
Are you reading
Yeah.
the second one?
No, this is the first one.
Okay.
No?
Keep reading.
Sorry, that was something bad. Anyway. Next page. Sorry about that. I lost our page. The elephant carried them through the jungle until they came to a river. Then he sat them down on the ground and said goodbye and went off back into the jungle. "How are we going to get across the river?" Jack asked Mr. Daydream. "Perhaps I can be of assistance. We used a particularly oily voice coming from the river. They looked, and there was a crocodile. "Use my back as a bridge," suggested the crocodile. It was very helpful. They were halfway across the river on the crocodile's back when the crocodile grinned a rather nasty grin. All the teeth and no smile. Then, flicking his enormous tail and shooting Jack and Mr. Daydream up into the air, the crocodile opened his horribly large mouth and waited. It was very frightening. "Oh dear," gasped Jack as he looked down at the enormous mouthful of teeth. "Oh dear, oh help." Mr. Daydream, upside down beside him, put 2 fingers in his mouth and let out that very large whistle of his. Suddenly, just as the crocodile's mouth was about to go snap, the big bird swooped down out of the sky. Mr. Daydream and Jack landed right on the bird's back. Phew, said Jack. Bother, said the crocodile. What is it with this thing today? Well, I promised you an adventure, didn't I? Grinned Mr. Daydream. You certainly did, said Jack. And now, said Mr. Daydream, I think we'll go to Australia. And they did, and Jack learned how to throw a boomerang so that it always came back to him. Yay, my book came back. And now, said Mr. Daydream, I think we'll go to the North Pole. And they did, and Mr. Daydream fell right up to his middle in a snowdrift. Oh no. I did too. And now, said Mr. Daydream, I think we'll go to the Wild West. And they did. And Mr. Daydream found a huge 10-gallon cowboy hat. The trouble was, when he put it on, he couldn't see out Jack. He called from underneath the hat, Jack. Jack. Suddenly, Jack realized it wasn't Mr. Daydream saying his name. It was the teacher. And Jack wasn't in the Wild West. He was sitting at his school desk. Jack, said the teacher again, you've been daydreaming. It was true, he had. But do you know something? Daydreaming is more fun than history. And I do believe that's true. Unless you are a girl of history. Otherwise, if you're daydreaming, you might be daydreaming of history or something. You could be daydreaming of anything. What's your favorite daydream? I don't know. Please tell me. Sometime. Or you don't have to, you can just keep it to yourself. But I want to know. I have a favorite daydream. It's one about cupcakes and candy. And cake. Yeah, I don't know what was that. I'm sorry, I just told you my favorite daydream. But anyway,